Hello everyone, welcome back. So when you are home watching the video, you might want to make sure that you have your calculator ready, your pencil, pens, highlighters. Make sure you finish page 12, which is the square roots activity sheet, and then I would like for you to answer the questions at the very bottom and be ready to discuss those next class. So these are the notes we did not get to, but I'm pretty sure that you would be able to answer these on your own. So let's talk about squares and square roots. So a perfect square is the square of an integer, which is a number. A square root of a number is one of two equal factors of the number. We talked about that like 3 times 3. So 3 is a factor, 3 is a factor. A radical sign is used to indicate a positive square root. Every positive number has a positive square root and a negative square root. We'll talk about that in just a minute. The square root of a negative number, such as negative 64, is not real because the square of a number cannot be negative. Think about that. So if you know your rules of integers and you said a negative 8 times a negative 8 gives you a positive 64. So what if you did negative 8 times an 8? That would give you a negative 64. When you do square roots, your factors have to be exactly the same. So that would not work. So let's look at the examples. So the square root of 144 we know is 12. That's a positive square root. Look at letter B. Find the negative square root of 121. Remember we talked about if the negative is on the outside, you would just tag it along. So the square root of 121 is 11, then take that negative and plug it in. C just means that the square root of 49 could either be positive or negative. Yes, it could. Look at the signs on the outside. So your answer would be positive or negative 7. That's all it means. Letter D, you have a negative on the inside. That doesn't work because how would you get a negative 100? You can't do that because a 10 times a negative 10 would give you a negative 100, but remember square roots, they have to be exactly the same, so it doesn't work. So you would just say that this has no real solution. Okay, so just remember, if the square root is on the inside, there's no real solution, but it can be on the outside. So go ahead and practice those 8 questions. So pause the video right now and try them on your own. Okay, we're back. Hopefully you answered all 8 questions. Let's see if you are correct. Number 1 is 5. Number 2 is 13. Number 3 is negative 14. Number 4, negative 22. Number 5, positive or negative 4. Number 6, positive or negative 15. Number 7, no real solution. And number 8, same thing, no real solution because that negative is on the inside. If you have any questions about this, just come to class with your questions and I'll be happy to go over it with you. All right. So what I would like for you to do right now is to go ahead and fill these answers in for me as practice. This is on page 13. So come to class with 13 completed. Okay. I'm going to go on to the next page, which is 14, and show you about estimating square roots. We did this in class when we were doing the human number line and trying to find the square root of a non-perfect square. So let's think about that. These are your perfect square numbers right here. These are your perfect squares. These are all your square roots down here. okay? Just like in our human number line, we talked about numbers that are not perfect squares. So the square root of 14 is a decimal. So go ahead and use your calculator and figure out what the square root of 14 is. You should have something between the numbers 3 and 4, correct? So it is a decimal. So what you would say is the square root of 14 is between 3 and 4, because 14 is between 9 and 16, and what I mean by that is perfect squares. Those are the perfect squares, right? 9 is a perfect square, 3 times 3, and 16 is a perfect square, 4 times 4. So you have a 14, which falls in the middle of those two, which would be right in between, let's see, 9 and 16. So it would be here, right? So the square root of 14 would be somewhere in between here, because the square root of 9 would be here and the square root of 16 would be here. So which whole numbers does it fall between? It falls between 3 and 4. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing for the next one. So the square root of 89, go ahead and plug that into your calculator. You should get a decimal. What do you get? You should get something between 9 and the number 10, correct? So it is between the numbers 9 and 10 because you have a decimal. So again, these are our perfect squares. So look up here. Where would the square root of 89 fall? Right here, right? So it's between the numbers 9 and 10 because 89 is between 81 and 100. Pause the video and try the last one on your own. Okay, let's check and see what you did. You should have found that the square root of 38 is between the numbers 6 and 7, because 38 is between 36 and 49. Good job. Okay, let's look on the number line. So instead of drawing an arrow from each of the square roots below, I want you to actually put them on the number line, and I'll show you what I mean by that. We know that the square root of, let's look at the first one. The first one is square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6, correct? So what we would do is we would put the square root of 36 right above it because it is equal to 6. Square root of 81 is 9, so we're going to put the square root of 81 here. Square root of 25 is 5, so we'll put that here. The square root of 49 is 7, so I'll put that here. Square root of 16 is 4. And the square root of 20, where would that go? So it's not a perfect square, you're going to get a decimal. So between which two numbers would it be? So hopefully you figured out that 20 is between 16 and 25. So it's going to be between 4 and 5. So the square root of 20 is going to be somewhere in between here. Okay? So you should have gotten 4.5 for that. Okay, that is it. So if you have any questions, bring that to class on Tuesday. Don't forget you have a quiz only on adding, subtracting, combining, multiplying and dividing integers. Finish page 13 and also finish page 12 and answer these questions at the bottom. So have a great weekend and I'll see you on Tuesday.
Do it.